Welcome everyone to another edition of Drunk Agile. With me as always is Prateek Singh, but really the only reason we keep Prateek around is because of Nisha, and there she is. How many socks does she have on right now, Prateek?
She has zero. She has zero. It's been a struggle. It's been a bit of a struggle keeping those on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's on a new supplement, which seems to be helping her quite a bit. So
Okay.
she's needing the socks less too.
Because didn't you say the other day she had like four, and then like 15 minutes
Yeah,
later there was like one or
yeah.
something?
It was there was something going on because I came downstairs and one by one these socks were disappearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks there. Thanks for being with us, Nisha. Prateek, what are you drinking?
It's another bottle kill night.
Uh-oh.
It's a 10-year Jalvin Glenlivet. I think you brought this for me a while ago. I don't remember if we picked it up together or you brought this for me. 60.6% Speyside bourbon cask. Yeah,
Moment of
yeah.
silence for that. I'm drinking some random dude I never met before. Seemed like a pretty nice guy though. Got me this Garrison Brothers bourbon from Texas. It's a single barrel cast strength, 62.7%. So not too bad.
Mm,
Really, really good and old fashioned. Trying it neat tonight. So cheers
yeah.
everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Yeah, we're in dangerous territory. Both of us are over 60% today.
Yeah. So we'll see how many we get through. Speaking of how many we get through, this is going to be our first in our series of three. Is it going to be three? First in
At
our
least.
series of three videos on prioritization. We had done a video way back when, and by way back when, I mean, I think 2 or 3 months ago, on just-in-time over prioritization. And we kind of touched on some of these topics in that video, but we probably didn't go as deep as we should have. And we've had a couple of requests recently for a deeper dive on prioritization. So thanks to all of you who've written in and who have suggested. Please keep those coming. So the reason there's going to be a series of three videos, I'll kick us off, Prateek, and then I'm going to hand it over to you and you do all the talking. The reason there's a series of three is because we are going to discuss three different levels of prioritization. Most people, when they think of prioritization, they think probably just about one level, maybe two. But there's actually three. And this third one, the third one, which is really the first one we're going to start with in this series, I would argue is the most important. It's the one
Yeah.
you probably don't think about, but it is the one that is by far and away the biggest bang for the buck. If you get this right, the biggest bang for the buck in terms of driving predictability, stability, effectiveness, efficiency, all that stuff in your process. Prateek, what is the first level of prioritization and why do we care?
Yeah, the very first level of prioritization in the three levels that we're talking about is prioritization for active work. Again, as Dan said, people don't usually think about this as prioritization. And when we say prioritization for active work, what we mean is let's say you've got 10 things active with your team right now. There are 10 things we're working on. Well, which of these do we need to focus on today to get it moving? If one of these is taking longer than we expected it to, do we all need to, as a team, come together and solve for this? Or if one of these is, for any other reason, more important than the other, whatever it is, how do we most adequately uh, utilize the team's time on the work that is active right now? Which ones do we prioritize to get it closer to the customer? That's the first level of prioritization.
And that may not seem like that big a deal because you're probably like, hey, we've started it, we're working on it, it's all got to get done anyway, so who really cares? But it turns out the decisions that you are making around what Prateek was talking about has a huge impact on whether your process is going to be predictable or not. So let's for example, let's just take an example. I'll just kick us off with an example, but I think there's several other things we can talk about. For example, let's say that let's say we've got a flow that has a development done column followed by a testing column. And let's say there are two things in the development done column, and our board is signaling to us that we have capacity to pull one of those items from dev done into testing. The question is, how do we choose which one? Now, longtime viewers of this channel probably know that right away. It probably should be pretty obvious to you, but whether you've thought about it this way or not, that is a prioritization decision. What you are specifically making a decision to work on one item before another item. So Prateek, can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's as Dan said, if let's say there are these two things in dev down, that's what we have now. In an ideal pull system, capacity frees up and say test, and they have to pull something from dev down. That's when we can pull. Now at this point, that capacity that's freed up, that capacity is costing us dollars, euros, pounds, whatever you want to call it. There are people there, there are systems there that cost us money. How do we most appropriately utilize that capacity, utilize that money, has a great bearing on how overall we end up utilizing the money that produces value. How we add how we adequately how do I want to say this? How do we adequately spread these investments that we have out? That has a huge impact on the returns we're going to get. Something started, it's already taking up investment from us. How do we get that thing through so that we can get some return?
So Prateek actually gave you the answer without actually giving you the answer. We probably should be clear about what the right answer is here. Um, the general heuristic in terms of how to decide which one of those to pull, again, it's a heuristic. It's a pretty strong heuristic, I would argue. You have to have pretty good reason to look off this. But it's all other things being equal, you work on the one that's oldest. You work on the one that got there first, right? It's if you want to be really technical about it, the queuing strategy is first in, first served. It's not necessarily first in, first out. I don't know if we want to do a video on the difference between FIFO and first in, first out and first in, first served. Not that big a deal. But you work on the oldest one first for exactly the reason that Prateek was talking about. There is investment that has been made on this thing. Not to mention, if you don't work on the oldest one, if you're just kind of randomly choosing, well, then what's to stop you from, working on item number 2? We pull in item number 2, and then item number 3 comes in behind that. And now we've got to choose between item number 1 and item number 3. So we choose item number 3, and then item number 4 comes in behind that. And then item 1 just really kind of gets stuck there. It's that type of phenomena that prevents you from being predictable. This is the whole argument against expedites, by the way. If anybody has seen, my Titanic video. What else do we want to say about that, Prateek?
Yeah,
Or anything to set us
just
up, maybe even for the next video too.
yeah, I just wanted to pull on the predictability thing a little bit, which is to say that the only way you can actually be predictable is if you finish the things you start. Because if you don't finish the things you start, you cannot predict when you will finish something. And the way you finish the things you start is by doing what Dan was saying, looking at how old these things are and making sure that the older things are actually making progress towards the finish line. Otherwise, you'll get into the situation that Dan's talking about, where that this thing just ages forever and other things are flowing through. We've talked about this a little bit in an economic sense of you've put in a lot of investment in this, we want to see returns. So that's why prioritization of active work is supremely important compared to the other two things that we're going to talk about. And this is where we're setting up for the next video. Is the next one we'll talk about is how do you prioritize what's next? Like, what is the next thing we work on? Because most people think of prioritization in that sense. In fact, in the third sense as well. But what's next is what many a time people are thinking about. So level 1 is prioritization of active work. In our opinion, probably the most important kind of prioritization. Level 2 will be next video.
So there's your answer. You may not be thinking about the order in which you're working on the things that you already have in progress as prioritization, but in our not so humble opinion, that's really the only prioritization that matters. Not only is that prioritization, whether you're thinking of it that way, that not only is it prioritization, but it's the only prioritization that matters. Prateek has already set us up for the next video. So we'll kind of leave that discussion for that time. I'm going to take the last word then, Prateek, and just kind of sign us off from here. For Nisha, who is, get that swiggin. For Nisha, who is still in her same spot. For Prateek, my name is Daniel Vacanti. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next prioritization video. Thanks, everyone.